Hey guys, David Anderson official here, and I'm going to teach you how to backwards manual like I do. You can backwards manual on a cassette or a free coaster, but I'm going to do this how-to towards free coasters. Personally, I learned how to backwards manual on a cassette, and I think that it made it easier to backwards manual on a free coaster, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn it on a free coaster first. The first thing you're going to want to be able to do is probably just manual normally, because, backwards is obviously going to be a little more difficult. So if you know how to manual and to how to roll out, you'll be fine. I think the first step is just nose pressing against something like a pole or a grind box or a car tire, anything you can find, because it's a lot easier to just press up against something and then backwards manual from that, and it's a lot easier than just 180ing and then trying to get straight enough to pick up a backwards manual. Then lean back, straighten your arms, and sit back. So you'll see that I sit low and it's like a squat almost, but my arms are straight. So when I'm holding the bars, I'm leaned back like this and my arms are straight. My elbows aren't bent or anything because then the front end will drop. You want to keep your weight over the back wheel. So your butt should actually be past your seat and be over your back tire. So what that does is keep all the weight right on your back axle, especially if your arms are straight and you're leaned back, then all the weight is on the back axle and it's easier to balance. And to keep a better balance, because a lot of times you'll be able to pick up and you won't go backwards or down, but you'll be leaning side to side. And the way to avoid that and just to get a cleaner, smoother backwards manual is to stick your knees out a little, and what it does is make your bike balance wider, so every little bump or little movement that you make isn't gonna tip you side to side if your knees are out. What I find that helps is actually having high tire pressure, and it just lets me know that I'm doing all the balancing and it's not a squishy tire that's keeping me locked in. I know that I'm doing 100% of the balancing, and I actually get stuck a lot more doing squishy tires because, I like having a really responsive bike, so if I see that the front end's dropping, I pull on it and I know my tire isn't going to squish and make me loop out or catch on anything. So I like having really hard back tire. Another good thing to remember is that this trick you're not going to learn from a how-to. These are really good tips for you to think about while you're trying it, but this is one of the tricks that you're only going to get good at if you do it over and over and over again. So go outside after watching this video, remember the tips that I gave you, and just over and over and over again, just hit the box, lean back, and see how long you can go. If you're doing it off of like a curb or a parking stopper, you can see if you can get the whole parking space long ways and just like gauge how far you can balance during that. One of my favorite places is just a basketball court because you can go right up against the pole, and then you have the 3-point line, free throw line, and half court, and just see if you can like set those goals and make it to each of those. That's probably one of the best places to learn, I would say, unless people are playing basketball. I'm really tall, so I get away with it, but you're sitting so low sometimes that having a high seat can actually mess you up. Like if you're just squatting so low that you're on the seat and start tipping back, there's no way to stop it, and you'll just, sit down or fall on your butt. So if you put your seat down a little bit, it actually gives your legs a little more room if you want to go side to side, or just to keep the manual if you get a little squirrely and start lifting. In the backwards manual, if you're just riding like normal, your knees might be like this, but you need your knees out like this, and that lets you go more side to side. So if you're leaning either way, you can just stick one knee out more than the other. So like if you feel like you're leaning that way, you pull this way. And that's actually how you turn too. So if you want to go in like a circle or make a curve with the backwards manual, the way to actually do it is to tilt your bike. So your front tire is not on the ground, so obviously you can't steer like normal. If you're balancing straight and tilt like that, you're going to make a turn like, if I lean this way, I'll go that way, but backwards. So if I stick my knee that way, I'll tilt like that. And that's actually how you balance too, side to side, is just push the bars like that, either way you need to balance so that you don't flip over side to side, and then you can control it a little with your knees. So you'll see a lot of the balancing. You'll have to figure it out. But for the most part, you want to try and balance with your legs and not with your arms. So if you keep your arms straight and do it with your legs, I'd say it's more consistent. If you have a short back end, it makes this trick a lot easier because you don't have to pull up as high, and you can actually do the backwards manual lower to the ground. Because what I was saying earlier about having your center of gravity over the back axle, if you have a short back end frame, the axle is closer to your body, so you don't have to pull up as high, so your front tire can be lower off the ground, and you won't have to struggle as much with leverage. So you could balance here instead of maybe here. You don't need to have high tire pressure to do backwards manuals. Riders like Devin Smiley, he doesn't do high tire pressure, he does low tire pressure, and he's still really well known for his backwards manuals. Alright guys, so remember my steps. Let me remember my steps so that I can help you remember. Sit low, have your arms straight, have your knees wide, and the fourth and most important step in this whole thing is to keep trying. I can tell you a million times how to balance in a hang 5, but you're not going to be able to hang 5 until you try it. Backwards manuals, it's different on every bike, so you won't know exactly where you should put your weight or how high your front tire should be until you go out there and try it and find your balance point. Your balance point is going to be, you're just sitting there perfectly balanced, and you'll have that in and out for a couple seconds, and your balance point is a really small space of the manual that is really, really locked in. Your hips might have to move back or forward to keep your weight where it's at, and if it's really bad, you might try and save your backwards manual by pulling up on your arms, but remember that you want your arms as straight as possible during the backwards manual. Alright guys, remember, just try it as many times as you can in a day without getting completely exhausted, and just remember you are going to flip over a lot, but if you're just nose pressing against something to go backwards, you can go slow and you're not going to hurt yourself, but you just might sit down and roll over a couple times. It's really not a risky trick to try and learn. It's not like the same as nose manuals where you're going head over the bars. You just basically sit down and be alright. So if you learn at low speed, you're not going to get hurt, and it is really a good trick to learn and put in your arsenal of tricks that will impress people. People love watching backwards manuals. Hopefully you guys can learn it, and if you get a really long one, tag me in it. I'd love to see it. This is one of my favorite tricks. It's probably the most fun trick to balance in. I'd say this is way more fun than the hang 5s and whiplashes I do. Backwards manuals are always going to be one of my favorite tricks. Alright guys, remember, sit low, knees wide, arms straight. Thanks.